Boys, welcome. I was about to say Momentum Monday. I'm already over caffeinated. Phil, welcome from Deer Valley. I'm escaped the markets to ski with my partners for a couple days and talk about the world. I'm gonna head out there on the slopes in a little bit. We got an igloo behind us. Luca Netz joining us from where are you joining from today?
Miami, Florida.
Igloo capital of the world. We're going to talk about the Pudgies, Penguins, and what you're working on in the crypto world. What an incredible week, boys! Michael, welcome from Mumbai. And when I say incredible, I mean stupid. So stupid, full of gaslighting and grifting. I wrote last week, Phil, that it was the dumbest week in American history. And what I mean by that is we're a couple clicks away from any truth that you could possibly want. And yet people are opting into being dumb and just kowtowing to billionaires and party lines. Now, we could complain about that, or we'll just look at the prices. We're going to start this show before we get into it with Pudgies and Luca. Michael's in Mumbai. We have a lot of talk about AI, and I think it's just really important as everybody screams from Elon to the Dems. I don't know what they're doing, but from Trump yelling out tariff numbers as if it's a daily bingo. The markets are voting, and I haven't seen. You always say you've seen everything in the markets, Phil, but I haven't seen anything like this. In that the markets aren't in trouble, U.S. growth stocks are in trouble, and blame it on whatever you want. It's not really a recession; it's a mood session, right? He's kicking growth in the nuts. So, Phil, let's get into the charts, but first, guys wanted to talk about the Cashtag Awards. I think we're going to show some links. We are having our first Cashtag Awards, celebrating the best of FinTwit and Stocktwits and Reddit, who are the best traders, who's the best educator, community members of the year. You can go to stocktwits.com/award. There's 14 categories, easy to vote for. We have the actual stock of the year, really fun. April 30th with some great comedians and our community at the Stand in New York. We also got Crypto Trader of the Year. So it takes about 5 minutes if you want to go vote for your favorite people. We're going to have an incredible night. And that is April 30th in New York, coming up just in a month and a half. Phil, you'll be there.
I'll be there. I'll be doing some awarding. I'll be telling bad jokes maybe. But I can't wait. This should be great. This is a long time coming. Like Cashtag Awards is not like you came up with this idea years ago, and we just never did it. And now we're finally doing it. And there's like there's so many people involved, so it's fantastic.
And then Michael, you'll probably be joining us if you're in country.
The which one?
The Cashtag Award.
Who is this? I'm sorry. Is this the wrong number?
I'm in Mumbai. Leave me alone.
He's fucking watching cricket.
He is. You were just telling us the whole country.
People watched it. Yeah.
So who's tuned in? How many people are tuned in right now in India?
Well, the game is done, but it was almost 900 million people were tuned in. It was extraordinary, and India won, and it was a good game against New Zealand. I mean, you think about it, it's almost 2.5 times the population of the U.S. all watching this game.
So it's about the same amount of people that watched the crypto summit last week at the White House.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Bill, let's get right to, before we get into...
Let's just talk about price. We were talking about that before we came on. And so everywhere you go now, people are arguing, people are debating, people are mad about politics, and international politics and the global macro. So much. And there's so much derision. We're enemies with Canada now. I mean, who even knows, right? We're friends with the KGB, enemies with Canada, twisted upside down. However, you said something, Howard, right before we went on. It's like none of that is relevant. You're deferring to price, and that is just cold hard truth. Go.
Yeah. So let's pull up all the charts and we'll whip through them, okay, for people to see, because there's something going on. We talked about it for months around deglobalization. We had Lewis on next week. We spent a lot of time on crypto. Michael was wary. There was the Tesla breakout that Michael was wary of. It doubled almost, and then it was pulled back to below that price. But here is something. Steve Straza, credit to Steve at All Star Charts, and Charlie Bilello, and some of the guys who are already up for awards. And we talked about this last year with China. This was the best week ever. Okay, not since last year, not since 08, not since the great financial crisis. We've been in an 18-year relative bull market, United States over most of the rest of the world, but especially mainland continental Europe. And you had the biggest rotation out ever last year. So people are voting. And it's not Europeans voting, it's institutional money voting. Again, 1 week does not a trend make, but the headlines match the prices at this point. So you'd be crazy not to, and combined with this, I don't know what other charts we have. We had Germany hitting all-time highs, France hitting all-time highs, Italy, where the VIX is always 4, near all-time highs. What chart is this, Phil?
This chart is basically the developed. Oh, well, this one, go back to that last one really quick. Okay, most interesting chart in the world. This is basically the developed world, ex-US, right? The developed world, ex-US, relative to the US. And what you see here is you see that forever, the US has been outperforming the rest of the developed world. I just looked it up. When I talk about the developed world, I'm talking about Japan, and this is the majority of this index. Japan, United Kingdom, France, Switzerland, Germany, and then other makes up 30% or so. And so you see that basically for the last 20 years, or last 15 years, almost 20 years, the US has been outperforming the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And last week, and now, are we still in a downtrend here? Is the rest of the developed world still underperforming according to this very long-term downtrend? You could draw that line, yes. But last week was the best week ever recorded, ever. You see that little chart at the bottom, 1 week ROC. This was the best week of outperformance for the rest of the world relative to the U.S. ever recorded going back 25 years. Yeah. So that, I mean, is there something happening here? It looks like it. Do we know for a fact? No, 1 week doesn't a trend make. As you can see, it still looks like a downtrend if you were drawing lines here. However, this is one of those kind of smash weeks. It's like when a company beats earnings by so much, and everybody's perception. Everybody's talking about this, and it's just this is either a wake-up call, and to your point before the program, this is price behavior. This is cold, hard truth. This is people voting with their wallet. This is not people out in the street or on Stocktwits arguing or debating about it.
And it's happened in China last year with the big divergences, and and you had the breakout, and then a lot of smart people came out and said, as much as we don't want to say it, they're starting to buy China, right? And we did, you did, I did, bought some Baba. We've been talking about it. I can't name you 100 European companies 3 weeks ago, but over the last 2 weeks, I've broken down EWG. I've broken down a bunch of other country indexes. You've got minerals, cement companies, industrial companies, stuff you never heard of. But again, money will flow where money is allowed to flow. And right now with tariffs, money is voting. They're saying we're in a deglobalization trend. Whether we forced Germany and France to rearm. You know, listen, in 30 years, that may be a good thing, right? Because, we don't know what Trump's true strategy is. He's not very good at expressing a long-term strategy. He's good at barking out tweets and orders. But if the long-term strategy is, listen, we can't defend the rest of the world, that trend change means whether he pulls back or not, these people are taking him seriously around the rest of the world, and they're going to start spending money. Now, where they borrow that money from, Michael, and where the deep problems associated as this, it's not going to be a smooth transition, but that spike tells you that money is starting to listen, institutional money, and they're looking for other homes, right? The money is going to start looking for other homes. So the research is being done in the background. They have AI to help them with this research. It took me 2 minutes to come up with 200 European stocks. And I can send an AI agent out to do research on all of them and build all kinds of models around this. So, this is all happening in real time. At the same time, money continues to come out of US growth at like a crazy rate. And today it's Apple catching up to the downside. So you're finally, I think, if we could pull up the social VIX next, I think this is really incredible. This is a Stocktwits version of how people are thinking. So if we can pull this up, we don't have this out publicly yet because we're still, stress testing the data going back all these years. But I talked about it last week, Phil. Let me just quickly go through and then we'll get to comments. 2020 was a VIX 90 spike. March 2020, you saw it was, if you match it against Stocktwits sentiment, same thing. It was a record spike in the Stocktwits social VIX. And this is the way we break it down, is the engagements in bearish equities, right? So it's a really interesting study in that people flocking to talk about things, right? Both bullish and bearish. And we flash forward to today, over the last 2 months even, and you can see this historic spike. Now, you can read into it what you want, but Stocktwits audience about a month ago, 2 months ago, started engaging more in bearish content around the site, right? If somebody was bearish on Tesla, it was getting more engagement. If someone was bearish on the S&P, it was getting more engagement. So not only did sentiment turn bearish, which many people use as a countermeasure, but it accelerated, and the people became fascinated with it by engaging in the negative content. And here you have it, March 10th, last night. I shared this last night, and I said we're at that point, right, where we've spiked to, well above the COVID. So there's this fascination and panic going on at the same time with being bearish and engaging in bearish content. So maybe people are acting too gleeful around Tesla's demise again. So I don't know exactly what it's saying, but I'll tell you two things that I surmise. People are in the wrong stocks, right? So they're scared. People are taking too much glee in the fact that Elon's destroying his brand. And the people really are scared. You have that combination of thing where people are engaging in bearish tickers and stocks. And this goes to crypto too, right? Like with the crypto summit and the rug pull weekend by Eric Trump and Donald Trump. People are fed up. So I wrote last night that we're at some kind of point where we both either crash and this spills over to the whole market, or there's some bounce at hand. Right, this just based on price. Again, I'm not betting. I started buying some stocks yesterday, and I started buying stocks this morning, actually based on this. But at the same time, it's not like I'm excited about being long here, because I wake up and today he doubled tariffs on aluminum and steel to Canada. So the headlines are going to remain dumb and up for everybody's unique interpretation, which I think is bleeding into the market. And regular people are just saying, you know what, it's too complicated. Right, I can't even trade the Trump market. So let's go around the horn on this chart. Let's start with you, Luca, and what you're seeing as a crypto person with all this.
I think it's pretty interesting. I think from our perspective, we kind of exhausted all the good news, and so there wasn't much for us to kind of go on further. And then I think when it's interesting because we're open 24/7, Monday through Sunday. And we kind of got nuked before everyone else got nuked. And so it's actually probably a good telltale sign in the sense that we kind of know or that we kind of see volatility a little bit before I think the rest of the market does.
And by you seeing volatility, you mean the memes themselves or Solana? Like just
I think everything. I mean, I was talking to one of the big institutional players about 2 weeks ago. Of the top 1,000 coins, 850 of them are down 80%. That's the first time in crypto that it's ever happened. That the
okay,
top 1,000
beautiful.
coins.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So I think from our perspective, in crypto land, memes got blown out first, then everything else got blown out, and now the majors are getting blown out. So I think it's pretty interesting to see that. I think our bear market started 2 months ago, and then this bear market in stocks probably started 2.5, 3 weeks ago. We started to really feel the pain. I think part of that is just the intrinsic nature of crypto being on 24/7. And, obviously crypto being probably the most risk on asset. So it's probably the first thing for people to kind of sell out of, that we're kind of feeling a little queasy in terms of the macro ultimate. And then, crypto exhausted all of its good news. I mean, how much more good news could you get in
you can't get better headlines than it had.
Yeah. So it was bound for a flush. And so that's kind of where crypto is today. I can speak probably less towards the macro and the administration and all of the stuff that is going on there. But I think fundamentally, crypto, I think, is in a good spot in the sense that you have an administration that's going to provide regulatory clarity, obviously is going to, integrate it in some sort of meaningful way. Maybe the strategic reserve is one, maybe there's another. So I think long-term fundamentals for crypto are obviously in a good spot. I think the short-term tailwinds are rough to say the least. Obviously, as a founder with a bunch of risk on assets, but nonetheless, I think this is one of those things where it's like, look, you guys see the charts, you can pull it up since the beginning of time, or since we've been charting things. They go down, they go up, they always come back. It's just a matter of when. But I think this one is a little bit interesting. This one seems a little more personal. It seems like markets are reacting personally to what I think Trump and Elon are doing, which I find it a little fascinating. I probably have a little bit more of a Gen Z approach here into what my take is.
Give it to us. Give it to us.
I think my take is it's felt really fraudulent for quite a while. And so and what I mean by that is I think just like the government and what's been going on. I think I grew up, 10 years old with Instagram.
34, 33?
26.
26. Good. Well, it's your
I grew up with Instagram when
I
I was
Nancy mustache that got you looking older for us. Okay.
it was a new thing.
26. Well, cheers to you, man. But keep going.
I appreciate it. I think from our perspective, I grew up 10 years old on Instagram and kind of like listening to like all of these like conspiracy theorists and kind of like just, brushing it off. And then as you get older and you immerse yourself into the real world, you start to see the corruption in real time. And then even during the election, like no matter what side of the aisle you stood on, like you could just see the false narratives being perpetuated. And so I think like, from my perspective, I'm willing to trust, and I'm just an entrepreneur. So you guys might resonate this with or not, but I just tend to trust Elon, who I think is the greatest entrepreneur of all time, to go and do what he needs to do, which is, I think, provide more efficiency within the government and weed out the corruption. And I think like all things considered, like to say that, the last couple of years prior to Trump's presidency, there wasn't some sort of clear corruption going on. I'm willing to make the sacrifice for the markets, even though, I probably got margin called yesterday for the first time in 4 or 5 years.
Don't answer. Here's a little tip from older people. Don't answer.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Unfortunately, you have to answer, but go ahead.
I think from my
good for you. 26. I don't think I got margin call before. Phil, did you ever get margin call in your 20s?
Never had a margin call.
All right. Well, you're psycho. Mike Parekh, go ahead of Goldman. Did you ever get a margin call?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So Luca, tell us what that feels like, because you're a smart guy, and tell us what that feels like.
I've been called a couple times, so it feels all right. It doesn't feel good, but I've been part of my game is I've been called. So, I'm pretty levered in the downturns and in the upturns.
But that's why you look 34.
I had a plan. I had a plan at the beginning of the year to sell everything. I told myself because the Pudgy Penguin company has gotten pretty valued. Had a recent valuation that was pretty high, around $750 million. And so for me, I was like, well, that's my crypto exposure. 99% of my net worth is here. And so I don't need to be in it. I'm exposed to the industry. And so my plan was to sell at the beginning of the year because I had all the exposure off of the recent fundraise. And I just didn't follow the plan. I got greedy. But I don't mind getting called. I mind getting called because of the lesson. And I actually mind getting called this time around more so than the previous times, because it's like, at what point am I going to learn my lesson? Because like 2 months ago, my portfolio is at all-time highs. Now I'm getting margin called off of a stupid, you know, I didn't even need to add that margin to the books.
Well,
So
you're going to love, you got to start following Phil. You got 3, we'll be your therapist today. Actually, this is a turn of events. I can appreciate this because we're seeing it on Stocktwits, Luca. You know, you were nice enough to be donating some penguins to people that signed up for a spot.dog account. So we'll talk about that. But, you know, as someone who's a business leader in your age group in a category that is very controversial in this show and every show, and I'm long Solana, etc. But it seems like every time we go up, Bitcoin dominance comes out supreme. And I think we were talking about this before the show. Like, again, as someone who's invested in funds with allocations to crypto, I own very little crypto myself, but I have a huge allocation through diversification, just through people that I allocated to. Every time this happens, Bitcoin comes out dominant. It's hard to argue that, you know, what are we all doing? Like, you know, we've been at this for 15 years, not a long time in the history of things, especially in the history of gold or other rare assets. And we have stable coins, love them, love the idea of it as a feature in the product. We have Solana, love it in the sense of, you know, fast and somewhat decentralized, I guess, but not. But it's going to be like someone's going to build that as the Venmo, you know, built on rails with stable coins. It's kind of cool that kids can swap money, and I could pay you in pudgies, or, you know, and you got to convert it back to get your cash. It's just kind of like it seems like a Gen Z way of like gifts meets money meets memes meets fuck you meets life. And here you are, and you're going to learn the hard way and the easy way how to value a company. The old, you know, Warren Buffett. There's only, you know, we got to figure out how to value these companies. And it sounds like you're on that roller coaster ride yourself. So thanks for sharing that, Phil. Any advice there?
All I could say, you know, so there's this term loss realization, right? When you take a loss, when you sell the loser, you realize the loss, or you realize the gain when you sell the gain. And it has sort of a double meaning. Like, on one level, you realize the loss, you take the loss. On another level, are you processing it in your psyche? And I got to tell you, man, 26, Luca, you're so far ahead of the game because you're sitting here talking frankly with us during a moment of distress in the markets that everybody's experiencing. And who do you trust? I mean, I know you said you trust Elon Musk. I have no comment on that, but I will just say this: you're way ahead of the game. You're going to learn from your mistakes, and your trust for yourself will only increase. And I say that because you're sitting here in front of, you know, thousands of people, just being honest with yourself first, and then honest with the audience. I mean, you're way ahead of the curve, dude. Like, just beautiful. And, you know, we interview a lot of people, and I've been doing this for, we've all of us here have been doing this for years and years and years and years. And the people that come on or public figures tend to shine themselves first. You know, they tend to fool themselves first. They tend to, like, if they're lying to the audience, that's a byproduct of the fact that they're fucking lying to themselves. And so the fact that you're just coming on here and just matter-of-factly forthright in the middle of the situation, dude.
I didn't know. I mean, I assumed the situation was bad. I mean, I own a few pudgies, so I've been watching it and watching Solana go from 260 to 60. So quick, Luca, before Mike chimes in, you were there. So when Trump launched, so you understand the ecosystem as well as I. Just honestly, because as someone who's been around markets forever, I was sick to my stomach when I saw it happen. What does someone who's pro-crypto think when Trump and Melania launched that coin? What was going through your head as an entrepreneur in the space, someone trying to build a brand? What's going on in your head?
Yeah. So, there's probably 10 seconds of context before I answer that, which was, Pudgy Penguins released its token on December 16th. And on December 16th, we gave about 50% of the supply to the people. At the time, it was about $1.5 billion. It was the 8th biggest airdrop in crypto of all time.
How many wallets?
8 million eligible wallets, about 1 million and the change, I think, claimed. And for about 3-4 weeks there, it was holding. It was kind of going up and to the right and doing its thing. And I think the straw that,
and what's funny is to hear you say that is holding. Like, we're talking weeks. You don't know, like, you know what I mean? We don't know holding relative to what that means.
It's uncharted territory for me at that
Yes.
point, right? So I think like you're kind of just blessed to be there, I think, to a certain extent, but also believing, like, we know when market's full throttle, I'm in my mind thinking, Pudgy Penguins is worth $3-4 billion. Shiba Inu's worth 12. A lot more people know what a Pudgy Penguin is than a Shiba Inu.
Well, then
so
I know.
This trade's just getting started, and I still think that, right? Like, I still think as long as there's an anchor, anchors that I think are less obvious than Pudgy Penguins, Pengu, then ultimately I still think that trade is still relevant. So that doesn't change. But, regardless, at that moment in time, we were kind of we were smooth sailing. And then I think the first thing to kind of what's that game where you stack everything and you start pulling ones out?
Jenga.
Jenga. I was going to say that's what I thought it was.
No offense to our Chinese listeners, please.
Yeah. So, I think the first Jenga to come out of the tower, I think at this point was Trump, and we were the biggest Solana meme coin at that time, and so Trump just goes and just completely laps us. I think how he did it and the structure of it kind of was more upsetting, because it's like 80% to insiders. It was not really like for the people, by the people. And I think he could have had a huge opportunity to do that. That wasn't that bad. You live to fight another day. Trump, it is what it is. You move on. It was Melania and then Libra, which I think really started to mess with the tower. And so I think if Melania and Libra didn't happen, we would be in a way different scenario, in a way different spot. But those two were brutal. And so in the meme coin Solana sphere, I mean, very much outside of just macro kind of shitting the bed, there was actually like as big of a black swan event as you could kind of see, within that ecosystem as you can possibly get. Trump was a liquidity black swan, but was it a true black swan? Not really. It was kind of a net positive.
No, and it tested the pipes, and you could say
Yes,
this
exactly.
interesting
So
things.
it wasn't that bad. And then, where it got bad was then Melania and Libra, and then now the black swans are coming, and now the grifts are coming from the left and to the right. And then just taking all of the capital outside of the ecosystem, and then people just start to lose faith. And it's a roller coaster, and it's a bad beat. But ultimately, Howard, like you had mentioned, I'm a huge believer in Solana. I'm a huge believer in that ecosystem. I think it's only going to get bigger and better. I think when you look at user behavior and the PMF that has, not only for, I think, the normal retail people, but if you understand AI and if you believe in AI and agents and where that stuff is going to function, that's going to live on the Solana blockchain. I have a huge belief in that. So I think it will be fine. And I think it's just a bad beat, but that's where I think the chaos kind of started. And then I think traditional markets have since followed. But that's where I think things got pretty bad.
All right, Michael, you got a minute. Go ahead.
I had a quick question, Luca. Just we talked about it a week ago on crypto as well. But given the trends that we're seeing right now, you made a comment that the news on crypto couldn't have been better, etc. What are you seeing in terms of institutional versus retail flows? What's your sense of that? You think that with this stuff hitting these kinds of lows right now, the institutional side would potentially be a little bit more active?
I think this entire run these last couple of years have been institutional runs. I mean, I've been here since 2016, and this run specifically feels a lot less explosive.
He was 18, Phil.
Yeah. I was 18. Yeah, I was 18 when I first.
Right, I was doing the math there.
When I was
picking my nose and putting it under my desk when I was.
I was picking my nose and putting it under your desk.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Pick my
so
ass.
I was. That's funny. I was. I've been watching this stuff pretty thoroughly since I was 18. So about 8 years ago, and every run was just super explosive and fueled, I think, by, you could feel it in the on the Twitter feed. You could feel it in the rooms that you were walking into and the people that you were hanging around. This run felt a lot less explosive and a lot more driven by institutional capital than it did retail capital. And I think that's for good reason. I think there's definitely been retail adoption. I mean, naturally, every time price goes up, retail piles in. But I don't think it was the same like Thanksgiving dinner conversations that we had this year that we had maybe in the years prior. And I think it's because people are still licking their wounds from getting burned, you know, the 2 cycles before this. And I also don't think like the macro is frothy enough. I mean, technically, like people just don't have the same stimulus and the same money that they had once had in those prior cycles that they did, you know, this time around. And I think the big was kind of obvious, and I feel like kind of a Dutz, but you know, until interest rates drop, I mean, I only know bull markets with low interest rates. I don't know a bull market with 4.5%.
Very honest, it's true. You don't.
I've never seen it before, right? So the fact that we even had this run up, I think, is a little unorthodox. And in hindsight, is 2020, because if I really think about it, I don't know a bull run, and I've been, you know, trying to make it out of the, you know, I grew up really poor, trying to make it out of my situation, day trading Robinhood at 17, right? Like I've been staring at this stuff for a long time. I think from my perspective, it was, you know, I don't know anything else. So to think that like we even had a run was kind of a blessing in disguise. And ultimately the conspiracy theories of this is a big giant plan to, you know, force the Fed to cut rates, hopefully comes to fruition. And we have one of those Trump golden bulls, you know, probably 6 to 12 months from now, and it kicks off a pretty epic run. But I think that's really, I think my signal here is just low interest rates. I mean, at this point, you can't get cash if you beg for it without bending over and paying the piper to some bank who's going to hit you over the head with interest. So I think at this point, you know, people just don't have the cash that you think they do.
Well, I think this is becoming the Luca show because I got a million more questions for him. So if you're okay, let's keep going, Phil and Michael. Because I mean,
let's go. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Igloo?
AI will tie into it. I think we've covered enough about what's going on. The markets are saying we don't care about the headlines. We're selling until normalcy includes. What I'm saying from the social VIX is that it's gotten to the point where we are going to crash from our audience, or that we are in too many people are bearish, and don't be shocked by a huge rally. But that's still not going to change the fact that Trump is president. The crypto summit, Luca, what'd you think of that? And were you invited? Were you invited? And what'd you think of it?
I probably like I'm taking the stance as a crypto founder that I'm pro this administration. But like, just because I'm pro this administration doesn't mean you can't be like critical and call out things that I think are disingenuous or just silly. And like calling out a crypto strategic reserve with like ADA and Solana, like that's just pretty ridiculous. And I think it's just not one of our shining moments. But nonetheless, like, what did I think of the crypto summit? I mean, ultimately, look, like they're having the summit, they're participating in the conversation, they're taking time out of their day to take an industry that was once, you know, spat on and shat on and looked, you know, as the ugly redheaded stepchild within the family, and is no longer the ugly redheaded stepchild and is now more of a, you know, a normal stepchild. And so, you know, for that reason, you have to care and you have to give a shit. And I've always been a big fan of David Sachs. So All In podcast has been a great place for me for a long time. So, you know, you just have to give it the benefit of the doubt. I think I really didn't like the, you know, ADA, Solana, like, you know, and my biggest holding in crypto is Solana. Like, that's obviously great, but I just don't think those things are necessary. I think you have to be progressive without leaning into the stigma that, you know, at the end of the day, let's speak of it consciously, the stigma of this administration that is a bunch of grifters grifting, right? And you can't lean into that. Like, you've gotta be conscious of that stigma and not give them a reason to, you know, double down and triple down on that narrative.
All right, quickly then on the Igloo's behind you. The website's really cool. Just give us a quick walkthrough of, and then we'll get to AI. Give us a quick walkthrough of your vision and how you started this.
Yeah, I think 3 years ago, we bought an NFT project called Pudgy Penguins. Our idea was...
you acquired it.
We acquired it, yeah. We bought it.
The art?
Yeah, just some assets, 60 different assets, some NFTs, a trademark. We bought it for about $3 or $2 million. And the first thing that we bought within that was an NFT called Pudgy Penguins. I think the goal there was just how do we leverage IP to bring people on chain. I actually think IP is going to play a huge role within the crypto industry in a way that I think a lot of people underestimate. I think crypto right now adoption is driven by somebody's financial aptitude to go and get rich. But I actually think there's a lot of uses to the technology that I think are bigger than just getting rich from an individual level. I think one of them is digital ownership, and the TAM around digital ownership, I think, is super meaningful. So, Pudgy Penguins is one example, and our premier and kind of the nucleus to our ecosystem. Our concept here was like, how do we go and create the world's next global IP brand? And how do we leverage that IP brand to bring people on chain into experiences that are powered by the blockchain? And that has been our journey. Since then, we've expanded the Igloo to a suite of different products. Our whole thing is consumer within crypto. I think very few people know how to do consumer in crypto. Very few people know how to speak to consumers in crypto. And our whole suite is kind of predicated around what does it look like to build a consumer crypto suite of products that kind of take somebody in from, hey, loving a cute Pudgy Penguin to using our abstract blockchain on the bottom and what that ultimately looks like. And that's probably the really simple version of what we've been able to build over the last couple of years.
Someone who's impressed by the vision, what do they own? How do they participate?
I think you either buy a Pengu today, or you buy a Pudgy Penguin NFT or an abstract token if and when that comes.
Okay. So then go on Coinbase? No. Where can I go to buy Pengu?
You can go Coinbase, you can go anywhere, I think, pretty much.
Okay. And that's where you said the market cap peaked out at around 750 million.
The value, our recent fundraise institutionally was about 750 million. Our valuation for the coin at one point was 3 billion. I think today it's 500 million. The fully diluted value of the coin. So hence the margin call.
Crazy.
I got margin called on my personal Robinhood, but that we don't get any of those tokens. We're on a 1-year cliff, a 3-year vest. So it's
and
all.
What'd you study in school if you went to school?
I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out in the 10th grade.
And what'd your parents think of that?
Just my mom, and I dropped out to help my mom pay the bills. So I think she was pretty thankful.
Good kid. Okay, Michael.
And I'm just curious in terms of the demographics of the penguins, of the young, old kids, etc.
So the Web3 community is really a psychographic, and it's actually, I say this all the time, and you guys may or may not be familiar, but I think it's like one of crypto's most affluent communities, meaning like some of the biggest hedge fund managers, some of the biggest entrepreneurs and business owners within crypto identify as a Pudgy Penguin, which I think is super cool. But the demographic within our collector base is very much, I think, a psychographic, less than demographic, because it scales so crazily, meaning like a 20-year-old frat boy owns a Pudgy Penguin NFT, and your 40-year-old hedge fund manager on Wall Street owns an NFT, and your 60-year-old grandma who wants crypto exposure owns a Pudgy NFT. So it's pretty diverse. I think it's more of a psychographic of like good-hearted, kind people. The community is, I think, really phenomenal. I think in the real world, it's targeted more towards like kid adults, the 18, 19, 20-year-old. A lot of our content's positioned for that. If you've seen the Penguin, you've probably seen it on social media. I mean, we're getting hundreds of millions of impressions every single day. A lot of that is predicated on a little bit more mature, maybe relationship content, or maybe funny, emoticons or GIFs or things like that. That kind of depict some sort of mimetic, behavior or some mimetic emotion at the given time. So I think it's, the real IP brand is positioned for the kid adult. Our collector is really all over the place. And it's really a brand where, our mantra internally is like, we wanted to create a community where everybody can be somebody, and that everybody can be a 5-year-old, a 60-year-old, a person in Asia, a person in America, a person in Africa. It really doesn't matter. And that's what I think we've been able to create over the last couple of years.
How big's the company?
Company's about 105 people.
And mostly in the U.S.?
Mostly in the U.S. About 20 people are international, and about 85 are in the U.S.
And do they each write the 5 things they did each week and send it to you?
No, but we're actually starting to implement something like that, because I actually believe remote work is I think people take advantage. I'm not a fan of remote work, and so I think people take advantage of it. And so I don't actually do that, though. That is pretty funny, but it actually works meaningfully well to some extent.
Of course,
right?
Of course it does. People need to be.
You can see the
People want to
bullshit in
be
the
accountable.
answers.
Yeah. People want to be accountable. So there's truth in all of this. So you just have to, as a young man doing this, or young founder, let's call it, doing this. Slack fucked my world up really bad because it allowed people to just check out, and that made me quit being a CEO because I was the guy who demanded you to be around the office. And you went from like the subway's broken to like, it looks like rain this afternoon, I'm not coming in. Now we're flipping the other way, saying it's harmful to 26-year-olds like my daughter, who's your age in New York. She needs to be working in an office. So are you hiring right now?
I'm hiring. I'm always hiring.
Okay. Well, I'm fascinated by this discussion. AI and Pudgy Penguins, then we're going to go to AI, our own discussion that you'll chime in. AI as it fits into your world, Luca.
Pretty meaningful. I think AI internally, I think probably saves us around $100,000 a month. It probably could save us probably close to $500,000 a month if I had somebody in my corner that was an AI expert. So if you're an AI expert listening to this, you're probably the biggest hire I'm looking to make, because I totally think we're underutilizing it. I think externally, I actually just had a call with one of the, Curio, who I think just raised a big round in Silicon Valley, one of those toy AI startups. I had this vision of like, we're in Walmart's, Targets around the country. If you buy a toy, if you guys are not familiar, one of the cool parts about the Pudgy Penguin ecosystem is we have toys across the country, 10,000 retailers. Every toy is actually an NFT licensed from the NFT holder. They get a royalty in perpetuity. It's kind of a reinvention of the IP business.
How did they get the royalty? Sorry, just quickly.
Every year we annualize the royalty payments. We basically take each SKU. We have the holder's wallet. We actually made a marketplace that was on the Igloo Inc. website called Overpass. I can basically license on-chain frictionlessly. So it basically allows me to make on-chain payments just based on the royalty that they accrue, and kind of just is done through a couple clicks of a button. It's pretty cool. And so, we have that whole system, but every toy that we sell actually comes with a QR code. That QR code allows you to redeem, a couple NFTs. Those NFTs live on this forever Pudgy Penguin that you kind of build out and customize. And the goal is like, how does that, Pudgy Penguin then become your homework or helper, or, your buddy, right? And AI is kind of powering that. We haven't been able to fulfill that vision just yet. I'm looking for the right partner, but that is like something that we have in our scope. And then, obviously always looking to integrate with AI and things that make sense. I mean, I definitely want to stay hyper focused, but ultimately I don't think there's an industry or a category or a department that won't get disrupted by AI if it hasn't been already. So, all things AI we're looking to. That's probably what we're doing from a company level, and then obviously internally we're using it to power some of our creative and stuff like that.
Yeah, good for you. There's never been, it's me back running Stocktwits and Michael and Phil, us starting our own businesses on the side. It's like AI is finally a superpower for business people over just tech people. So yes, you're defining it right in the way we think about it. It's never been a better time to have some cash in the bank and be curious about how do I cut costs. And so good for you on that. I'm fascinated by what you're building, and it can be applied to other verticals. So I'll hit you up offline to chat about this and how it relates to investing, because there's something there as well based on what you've just learned from investing and what we're doing at Stocktwits. So there's some collabs that we can do, of course. Phil, any other questions before we go to
Yeah, I have a question. I have a question about branding. You guys have just killed it, and you were talking about sort of a generational perspective, and it seems like a brand for the future. And can you just talk about the development of branding and how you guys were thinking about that? Because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, like, it's just beautiful. It's like super friendly. It's super intimidating. And it's super just like you just want to be a part of it. It's like cute penguins, like who doesn't love that?
Well, even
so like how are you guys thinking about that? What's that?
Even the igloo and the website's well done. So
beautiful.
Yeah, I think the thesis for us was like, how do you take this taboo and intimidating industry that is crypto and package it via cute, non-intimidating penguins, use those penguins to invade the hearts and minds of people. And once you have their heart and mind, right, you can go in and board them onto this new, novel technology that, is ultimately really impactful and really meaningful. But my best friend since I was 13 is our chief creative officer. So I think he's one of the best in the business, one of the best in the world in terms of what this stuff looks like. I also got to give credit to the Penguin. I think we've got the best illustrated penguin of all time, and that's not to be
You bought
underestimated.
that and you acquired that.
Yeah, that's what I acquired, and that's what's not to be underestimated. Is like the magic that is the Pudgy Penguin. People love penguins. The penguin is a multi-billion-dollar character, right? It's just like a dog or a cat or a giraffe or a hippo or a lion, right? Just nobody's developed the penguin, and every penguin they've made up until this point is just ugly as heck. This is a beautiful looking penguin. It's a beautiful looking identity. It resonates with all walks of life. Again, it's super universal. And ultimately, I think that's why the IP has transcended into the real world the way that it has, and why nothing in crypto has been able to do it up until this point. And so,
have you thought about having a villain penguin? Because there is the penguin and Superman.
We have bears. We have bears who right now are winning the race, but they won't win much longer. But we do have bears, which I think are natural. It's ironic because it's natural. It's in the real world, it's the penguin's natural predator, and in the crypto space, it's our natural predator as well.
That's interesting. Okay.
And is the creative officer you're talking about is your best friend since you guys were kids? Is he drop out of high school too?
Yeah, he dropped out before He's a 9th grade dropout.
Wow, you guys.
And his life was harder than mine, believe it or not.
Dude, congratulations to you guys, man. Overcoming
so
hardship.
Be careful who you.
It's fucking awesome to see that.
I'm glad you have people you look up to. Be careful of. It sounds like just be careful who you bring around you at this point. And then why'd you choose out VC money versus going it through the blockchain?
I'd rather raise money from venture than raise money from my community, which is actually an unpopular take in crypto.
I agree, by the way.
A lot of people would love to raise money from their community and not raise money from venture. I actually think that's a huge mistake. Yeah. Venture is a more sophisticated investor too. If I'm taking capital, I'd rather take capital from guys who have a 5-10 year horizon than somebody who wants me to return their capital within 6 to 12 months. Though, we've been one of the best returning capital ecosystems in all of crypto for the last couple of years. Year over year, we've had huge success. I still have yet to open Pandora's box of raising from the community.
Be very careful. I mean, it's Stocktwits 17 years. I still don't do it. So
yeah.
So be careful. We're happy to chat. We're happy to chat about that. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's have. We spent a lot of time with Luca, and it was well worth it. But there's one other topic, and we did talk about the market, and we talked about Europe relative or the rest of the world relative to the US. We have more charts on that, but one really fascinating topic that we didn't get to, and Luca, you might have some views on this. Michael has been writing recently about the AI, evolution in AI, and I know I'm not getting this perfectly right, but Michael's going to explain it. In the evolution in AI of the two different sides of the brain development. So AI is a cognitive model, right? And you have right brain, you have, creative brain and analytic brain. And creativity comes from, a dynamic, I don't want to get into that, dynamic process of interaction between the two. I don't want to get fully into that, but what I want to do, Michael, is I want to ask you about this. It's just an incredibly fascinating thread. So why don't you just tell us in your own words a little bit about what's going on here and how you see it playing out? Because, this is just at the very forefront of what's happening here and Altman's recent comments, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. All of the big AI companies over the last few months have been very rapidly moving from chatbots to AI reasoning and AI agentic work. It's like almost every other day, each company is outdoing another one in terms of how these things outperform on the various evals and benchmarks and so on. The focus, because you can engineer these things, has been on the analytical side. The game has been to beat the evals every little bit possible with each of the iterations of the model,
because it's driven by
going after they've been going after the coding and the math, etc. Now Sam Altman kind of took advantage of this with 4.5, which is their last model that does not have the reasoning built in. They tweaked it so that it's actually better at the qualitative stuff. It shows some creative inklings and so on. And it's fascinating from a technology point of view that these things can be tweaked one way or the other. Humans are not as tweakable in that context, and the results are pretty interesting. I had the post I put up had some fascinating examples of these things, basically unearthing patterns of behavior, uh, both for organic and non-organic things, and creating this these narratives of how you'd envision a penguin and etc. And it's very, very creative stuff. So this business that everyone thought that this was very this year has been just super analytical, math, coding, that's the core application. And now all of a sudden from nowhere, this creative analytical side is coming up, and it's a horse race. And I think it's fascinating, and it will, given that it's OpenAI, it will be emulated by a lot of the other companies, and they will try and do both the creative stuff and the analytical stuff, which will be, I think, a good place to go with these
I was listening to
technologies.
Bill Gurley, and he's got his horse on OpenAI, but he seems to be he's old enough and credible enough, and he seems to be able to. He's still the one guy I go to for whatever reason because he's spawned so many copycats. Um, to really believe OpenAI, risky but in the lead. As a 26-year-old Luca in this space, who do you rely on? Like, who are you going? What are you using the most? What are you betting on?
Yeah, here's an interesting analogy. I have one point to Michael's, but to answer your question directly, I actually think LLMs and blockchains are super similar, right? Meaning, I think all LLMs minus like some sort of proprietary governmental, AI and blockchains are all going to do the same thing. They're all going to reach the same end state. And so where I think the value is going to accrue is actually in the wrapper and in the brand, right? And so who has the best consumer experience, who has the best brand, who's top on the charts,
Everything they told you not to trust, that's who you should be trusting.
Who has the best community? I mean, even me consciously, like what Sam Altman, you go through the Sam Altman story, like, do I trust him? Whatever, like, no, but like, dude, ChatGPT is the best consumer product. So I'm going to use it, and I use it. And I think they have the lead, and I think they'll continue to have the lead until somebody disrupts that. I mean, Google Gemini is trying to interfere with me. This new Apple update, I don't know if you guys updated your phone, but it's summarizing your texts. I mean, no matter what they're trying to do, for some reason, I'm stuck on ChatGPT. And I think there's something just about that familiarity and that having that first mover advantage and getting that first user base that it's almost becoming like a verb at this point. Like, I'm using AI, I'm using ChatGPT. It's almost like, it's almost like AI is ChatGPT to some extent. It's at least I speak this from like a person that is not a technologist per se, somebody who's like really just a true consumer through and through. And then, Michael, you brought up one interesting point. And I do think, there's going to be a lot of things that I think AI disrupts. The one thing that I think it'll never be able to disrupt is the human consciousness and the human soul. And those are the roots of creativity. And I actually am super long creativity here over the next 20, 30 years, whatever that means to you. You guys are better suited than me to derive what is, how do you long the human consciousness and the human soul and like those outputs that I think those create. And I think AI will never be able to replicate that. And I think that will be the one thing that we will have a moat on over the machines until the end of time. The machines will not beat us there. I'm very convicted in that respect.
That's a heavy conflict with you being an all-in fan, by the way, so be careful. Just one little joke in there. I had to do it. Well, fuck you for being 26, first of all. So Mike, taking that back from Luca, he's right? Like, my daughter uses ChatGPT and my wife uses ChatGPT. So it's 8 to 80, that old theme that I have. If an 8-year-old's using it and an 80-year-old's using it, game over, right? It's theirs to lose. And I give him credit because I'm not a Sam Altman fan. He strikes me as someone I should not trust ever. Okay. But the product's the product, and Americans, productivity matters to the world. And so we got to get over this stuff. So look at where does Grok fit in there? Because and Twitter for your life? Where does that fit in?
That's the conundrum, right? Is like consciously as human entrepreneur, like Elon Musk is the GOAT and Sam Altman has done some shady shit. They're both successful relative to most entrepreneurs of all time. But at the end of the day, I don't use Grok at all. I just don't, and I just use ChatGPT. Once you've ingrained a behavioral pattern, this is just like the consumer psychosis of consumer products. Like once you've ingrained a behavioral pattern, people are stuck, right? And it wasn't until I started getting better results on ChatGPT that I replaced Google with ChatGPT. I mean, everything has been replaced now with my thought process and my reasoning with ChatGPT. And it was just good marketing, good branding, really having that first mover advantage and having the superior product and still maybe having by a fraction the superior product. And once you're stuck and it's impossible to move over. And I'm not the type of guy to put my personal vendettas or my personal preferences over good product. I will always let that better product win, regardless of my personal stance of what I believe, who is right or who I want to support.
Whether you're lying or not, that's just the way it's the way it works, Michael. So knowing that he's, you and I are Google fans, but at the same time, you can't deny the fact that they lost the first big, huge battle where 8-year-old to 80-year-olds, much like YouTube, are using ChatGPT. So it's going to be catch-up mode. Is there anything that you see? What else happened this week, Mike, that's interesting? Obviously,
the other big one was
bots attacks are fucking crazy too. Twitter went down, and where DeepSeek fits in, and you had this other Chinese, you had this new Chinese.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Manus, which means hand in Latin. It's being touted as the next DeepSeek out of China, and it's another very good, savvy, aggressive, young Chinese entrepreneur who is doing very clever things. Again, leveraging, we're talking about ChatGPT and so on. He's leveraging a bunch of these big models, Claude from Anthropic, ChatGPT. There are indications that the technology is basically very cleverly engineered wrappers around these models, but there's a lot of deep engineering underneath where he's is creating a lot of agentic capabilities that are very differentiated with memory. And the product is in private beta. We can't, most of us can't get it, but all the muckety mucks have been able to get access to it, and the reviews have been off the charts. The YouTube videos are very impressive about what this stuff does. It codes, it creates games. We're talking about, you could literally, if you use it to build creative properties, analytical properties. It's again, I've been saying AI, the toothpaste is out of the tube. The innovation is going to come out of all kinds of places. In this case, again, we have it coming out of China, and it unfortunately,
Luca and entrepreneurs, this is good. Who we're the best. We just want the best products, and Luca's
exactly.
take 100K off his monthly. Stocktwits is looking to take hundreds of Ks off its monthly expenses without firing people, but at the same time, it is what it is. People will get smarter at using AI, and they'll become weapons. So what do we do then about bots in a world that Luca and I believe, and probably Phil and you both believe too, in I don't know about the consciousness, but I like it. But because I believe in karma and stuff, but in the creativity boom, nothing frustrates as a creator myself, right? And a creator on Twitter because I'm stuck, because that's where the remaining remnants of my audience are. There's nothing but bots. There's nothing but aggravation. And so for the creator, how do we overcome this world of bots? And it's gotten worse than ever. Twitter was down yesterday, supposedly. Elon blaming it on whoever, but where do we go with this? And it's getting worse. So AI is only going to make this worse, Michael. So what is the answer here?
No, there's no question there's going to be a lot of abundance of AI. Again, we are very adaptable. This internet's very adaptable. We will figure out ways to maneuver around this. At the same time, it's going to increase the cognitive load. Was something that Phil's talked about before. that people are going to have to really work even harder to discern what's real, what's a bot. But at the same time, as these things get a little bit more a lot more creative, um, in specific functions, it's not going to be mattering as much. Now, people are worried about the negative thing that the bots do, but at the same time, it's like that old cartoon, Spy versus Spy. We're going to have bots and counter bots, and that's already been happening in a pretty aggressive way. And even before AI, I mean, you look at Elon with 200 plus million subscribers. There are estimates that quarter of them, maybe more, are bots. I mean, it's we've had it, and I'm optimistic over the long term that maybe we come up with bots that basically mute the other bots a lot better and a lot faster. We will have the technologies themselves, I think, will create a lot of solutions
Yeah, Stocktwits is
to the
rolling out
problem.
a bunch of new products. How are you thinking about it, Luca, as you build a community with 8 to 80-year-old people on it? Like you've got to deal with this.
I think my feedback loop can no longer be the feed. It once was, right? And so we had this huge progression to this technological, fucking immersive experience where you can see in real time that feedback. And to be frank, I also think like the unconscious, unsophisticated person is also in your reply. So not only do you have the bots, right? But I feel like the person is getting dumber. So I'm like, now I'm just like an IRL maxi. I think like that is where you're just going to have to make the extra effort. You want your feedback. You want that loop, right? No one, there's just so much anger and so much resentment and so much mental illness. And now you have all these AI bots. It's like, what are you really going to get in your replies that is meaningful anymore? You simply won't. Right? Like the meaningful, so when you had this like almost like the paradigm and the pendulum swing so far to this right, as like technology progressed and social media came around, and maybe those early years were really meaningful. I mean, we all probably remember them. You guys probably better than me, right? But there was a really interesting moment in time where you could get all the feedback in the world. And maybe it's moving to more gated communities, probably, right? Whether they're token gated through maybe NFTs or gated through paid memberships, and that's probably where the good feedback will probably live. But the open feed is going to be a self-perpetuating cesspool, and that I don't think is going to change. I think you can't really solve bots. You can't really solve the overgrown like mental illness of people, especially like as technology progresses. I think the human mental illness will get worse. The like standard like baseline, I think it's not going to get better before it gets worse until people really start going outside and getting that human connection again and really start interacting. So me as an entrepreneur, my whole business is predicated on community. I mean, we built pretty much $1 billion business off of community, to some certain extent. And I only can get my feedback now. My true real feedback is in person, shaking hands and doing that interaction, because then I can really tell, I can really gauge appropriately. And the feed, I think, is no longer a place of good feedback.
Yep.
This is a beautiful comment. And I was thinking about your comments earlier about creativity. And the thing is that we all have the capacity to turn our computers off, to put our phones down, and to walk out our front door into the world, into fresh air, into the sunlight, into the woods, into nature, into a cafe with friends, and really connect to our true nature. We're still humans, right? Even if you get a chip in your brain or whatever, I don't even know what kind of craziness that is, but we're all human beings. And there is a human intelligence that precedes artificial intelligence. And so I can't recommend enough. I mean, Thursday afternoon, sometimes Friday morning, I shut down social media, shut down the internet, shut down computers as well as I'm able, and just get outside, man, especially with the weather getting nice. Just get the hell outside and get into the woods and connect with people that you care about. Get away from this world that you're talking about right now that is unfortunately polluted for worse at this moment. I think I'm still a little bit optimistic about it, that in time we'll be able to clean it up. But for now, just get the hell away from the tape. get away from the bots, get away from, you know, the doom scrolling and the machine, and just enjoy the natural world. I think that's, from an evolutionary basis, that is that fosters health. And I think it speaks to your comments before, Luca, about creativity.
Well, spring is coming. Yeah. Spring is coming. As I said, shared with the social VIX, as much as Stocktwits audience was picking up the vibes and getting bearish and spiking in fear and engagement around fear porn and like making fun of like Palantir and hymns, and it reached a crescendo the last few days. I think people will start poking their head outside again and reminding themselves that it's not the end of the world. So I think we're at some kind of probably bounce / or crash. Like I said, it's also, we're on the verge of a crash where it spills into. But again, that only will create opportunity. But the AI world is unrelenting, Mike, as we're seeing, right? Mumbai is, everybody's connected. The social feed, as Luca said, we know is dead, right? We long for the old days when social just started and it was fun, but the only place to get true feedback is from the people around you. All right, Phil, is that it for today? I think we got
Luca Netz, last word.
Last word is thanks for having me, guys. And Stocktwits is an amazing platform, so kudos for you guys to helping build this thing. It's pretty awesome, and looking forward to hopefully being back on for another episode. You guys can always email me, and thanks for everyone for tuning in.
Oh, grow up already, Luca. Jesus.
Awesome, dude. Awesome guest.
Great job, Luca. Good luck with
guys.
Pudgy and Igloo. Michael, safe travels back. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Adios, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.